and pull up my screen here. Okay. Yeah, so today we'll start with commas, lesson 11. For this lesson, by the time you complete it, you will be able to use commas correctly in writing. So let's take a look. And we got a little audio to start with.
A comma separates a sentence into meaningful units. For example, use a comma to form a series or to set off introductory and interrupting or descriptive phrases. Use a comma with a conjunction when you combine sentences and when you use two or more adjectives to describe the same noun. Also, use commas with dialogue to set off the tagline, the words used to identify the speaker, from the dialogue.
Yeah, so I mentioned this yesterday, when it comes to language arts, punctuation is really important because it helps, separate ideas. It helps us clarify things. And the comma is a real workhorse in English because it has, it helps us, it can help us combine sentences. It helps us set off ideas. We use it in series when we're talking about multiple items or things. And at the same time, sometimes we abuse it. We use it incorrectly. So through this, we'll get a little better idea of how and when we use the comma. And we have some examples here. First off, over in the corner, we have a phrase is a group of related words that cannot stand alone as a sentence. A clause is a group of words with a subject and verb, but may be incomplete on its own. And we talked about that yesterday a little bit with incomplete sentences, right? An independent clause is basically just a small sentence. A dependent clause is basically a sentence fragment where you have a subject and a verb, but you don't complete a whole sentence. And then a phrase is just like a tiny group of words that may or may not have a verb or a noun, but they're not enough. It doesn't have a subject and a verb to make it a clause. And then an interrupting phrase, a blue sedan, or a clause who is turning 50 this year. And the example sentences provide extra information. If this phrase or clause were removed, the sentence would maintain its meaning. So let's take a look at our examples here. So first off, we use a comma as to set off items in a series. So it's probably one that we're familiar with. I bought apples, rolls, and milk at the grocery store. So after apples and rolls, we add that comma, so we set that off in a series. In an introductory phrase, to stay in shape, football players must work out every day. You could recognize introductory phrases a lot of times because they'll start with things like as, instead, to, if, and you can read it. You'll kind of feel it organically where they stop and start. So in this case, it's just a phrase. It does not have a subject and a verb. To stay in shape, comma, football players must work out every day. And then here we see an interrupting or descriptive phrase, and it is set off by commas. Alex's car, a blue sedan, is in the parking lot. So we set off the phrase, grab my arrow here, a blue sedan, with a comma. And once again, there's not enough there to actually make a clause. It's just a phrase. And it's the second we actually have a clause there. My dad, who is turning 50 this year, just went skydiving. Again, we can remove those commas. We can remove what's in between the commas, and we still have a complete sentence. If you look at the one above, Alex's car is in the parking lot. Still makes sense. My dad just went skydiving. Still makes sense. But with these interrupting phrases and clauses, we add the commas and we can add in more information and it will still flow and make sense. So, who is turning 50 this year, right? That's not a complete statement. It's a clause, but we can drop that in between and make a whole, or we can add to the sentence. And then next, sort of what we discussed with sentence fragments, we can combine sentence. This is what we're going to do in the next lesson too. So this is all kind of tying together. We drove to the lake, but the fishing pier was closed. We actually have two complete sentences here too as well. We drove to the lake. That's the complete sentence. We have a subject, we, a verb, and then we have the follow on to make it a complete sentence. We can remove but here and the comma, and we also have a complete sentence. The fishing pier was closed. Subject, the fishing pier, was our verb, closed, finishes the statement. We combine them in the middle with a conjunction, but, and our comma. And then two or more adjectives. Here's another one. Here's another way that the comma comes into play. If you want to describe something with two or more adjectives, you're going to separate them with a comma. You're going to see this a lot in fiction writing, right? In creative writing is where you'll see this most often. And they kind of have an example here that you might see like in a book. It was a long, dreary day. And again, we got that comma right there, separating our adjectives. Excuse me. And finally, when we use quotations, so with quotations and dialogue, to separate the dialogue, we'll put a comma beforehand. So in this case, Sophia said, we throw the comma out there, then we use our quotation marks to set off the quotation. I'm going to take the dog to the park. So any questions on any of that so far?
No, none so far.
Okay, good. All right, let me. Go on to the next phase then. Okay, so now we'll do some practice with our quiz. Okay, and we have some more examples here. Same ideas, same examples actually. So down here, some test taking tips. When using the computer, be careful not to mistake the apostrophe for the comma. The comma key is directly to the right of the M key. And the symbols do look similar, and they are pretty close together. Usually the apostrophe is up by the enter or your return key on your keyboard. Of course, once you type it, you should know the difference pretty quickly, because one will be up in the air and the other will be below. All right, and you want to go ahead and read this one, Capri? Take care of it for us.
It says, my two brothers, Mike and Tom, came with me to the baseball game last week. And game last, that's a new one. Game last weekend. Which is the best way to write the underlined portion of the sentence? A, my brothers, comma, Mike, comma, and Tom, comma, came. B, my brothers, comma, Mike and Tom, comma, came. C, brothers, Mike, comma, and Tom came. Or D, brothers, comma, Mike and Tom came. I think the answer is D.
D. You're close. In this case, we're setting off, remember what we said about you could remove that information and you'd still have a complete sentence, right?
Yes.
So we can take out from here to here, right? And
Okay.
that's going to leave us a complete statement.
So B.
B, there you go. Yeah, and that's another thing. If you're taking a test, you may want to read a question like this. What makes sense if I remove it? So you can say my two brothers came with me to the baseball game last weekend, and you don't have to insert Mike and Tom. So that's a interruptive phrase. All right. So I'll go ahead and start reading and let you answer this one. To whom it may concern, as a frequent user of the city transit system, I am disappointed. Where do we want our comma placed there?
Let's see. I think the answer is D.
Very good. Yep. And remember, I mentioned, you can kind of tell these introductory phrases. As is one of those that you'll see a lot. So as a frequent user of the city transit system, comma, I am disappointed with the proposal to discontinue bus route 97, which provides direct service from Midtown to the warehouse district. The proposal does not take into account the needs of Midtown's citizens. Like many people in Midtown, I depend on bus route 97 to get to and from my job in the warehouse district. If this route is discontinued, I will have to transfer 4 times just to get to work. The city transit system's proposal also does not take into account Midtown's elderly citizens, such as my mother. My mother does not own a car and relies on bus route 97 to get to the city park, the supermarket, and the hospital. It is the quickest, easiest way. Where's our comma there?
This is tricky. I want to say B, but we're kind of listing things like it doesn't really fit.
Okay.
I
Here's
think it might be C.
C is correct. Now, here's the difference, right? There's 2 ideas that we can look at right here together. And I'll go ahead and say hi to Amina and Tia, just joined us. But so grab my arrow here. Right here, we see a list, a series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get to the city park, the supermarket, and the hospital. Over here, what we're looking at is adjectives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all we have to do there is to separate the adjective. So it is the quickest, easiest. That's all we have to do is separate those 2 adjectives. So that can be a little bit confusing because you're seeing, words that you need to separate with the comma. So when you run into that, is it a list? Is it a series of things, or is it an adjective? And that'll help you point to where and how many commas you're going to need. So in this case, boom, just C, quickest, easiest way for her to travel to these places. And then moving on, if the proposal is approved, my mother will have to walk several miles each way to buy, I close there we go, to buy groceries, pick up medication, or groceries, pick up medication. Which one we go with there?
A.
Where do you think that?
I think it's A.
A. In this case, just sort of like
the part, there's B. You gotta put the after the apostrophe, after the comma.
Yep. It's the same with and, right? Or you can use, well, not in replace of and, but in the series, you're going to use it the same way. So groceries, pick up medication, comma, or. All right, very good. And finally, as if it weren't enough to discontinue such an important transportation route, the city transit system also has proposed to increase bus fares. Now it will take longer for many people in Midtown to get to their jobs, and it will cost more money for them.
A. I don't even necessarily know if you need a comma, but I think it might be A.
Yep, you're right. Excuse me. Yeah, because we have two, we're using this to basically separate two clauses, right? Two sentences. Now it will take longer for many people in Midtown to get to their jobs. That's a complete sentence. Comma, and it will cost more money for them to do so. Yeah, so we're separating clauses here using and as a conjunction and the comma to pull those together. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, we'll move on to our workbook. Let me know if I ever move too fast, or you want to review something or take another look at something. I have no problem in slowing down and deep diving into things if we need to. Okay. And as we mentioned earlier, commas divide sentences and sentence parts into meaningful units. They help us clear up ideas and help us separate ideas. And they also, set off phrases that introduce or interrupt a sentence, and commas are placed before a connecting word to combine two sentences. A dialogue comma sets off the speaker from the dialogue. From the dialogue. By refining the skill of using commas correctly, you'll improve your writing and test taking abilities, especially as they relate to the GED reasoning through language arts test. And yeah, again, so this is kind of helping you build complex sentences. Once you understand, how and where to use the comma, this is really important, particularly for that next section we're getting into with sentence combining. That's really going to help along the way for you to write and build more complex ideas and sentences. And then we have a little tree here that shows you the different ways that we use commas. So separates items in a series. Our example, we went to the grocery store, the mall, and the movies. Set off an introductory phrase or clause. Again, that's one of those words after. If you see something related to sort of time, after he warmed up, Mike ran 5 miles. That's another introductory clause. Set off an interrupting phrase. My mom, who doesn't listen to rock music, went to a Tom Petty concert last night. Who doesn't listen to rock music? That's our interrupting phrase or our clause. You can eliminate that and you still have a complete sentence. My mom went to a Tom Petty concert last night. But you miss a little context there, and inserting the commas with that additional phrase gives you more information. And then combining two sentences, we had tickets for the game, but it was canceled. Those are two simple sentences, and we can combine it with the comma, and we use but for the contraction to combine the two. And then separating two or more adjectives, that was the worst, most blatant foul I've ever seen. Worst and most blatant being our adjectives, and we're separating those with the comma. And then we set off dialogue. See you tomorrow, comma, the teacher said. Anytime we use quotations and we're setting off something that somebody is actually saying, we're going to use a comma to either introduce it or at the end. Whichever, if we said the teacher said in front of the quote, we would say the teacher said, comma, see you tomorrow. In this case, it's at the end. All right. And here we go with another tip. These are funny. You'll see these on the internet. People make memes out of them a lot, where you'll see incorrect use of punctuation, and it really changes the meanings of things. And here, as well as in the sentence, I think my parents, John and Martha, it is clear that the parents are named John and Martha, right? Because we are separating them instead of in a series. We're separating that as an interruptive phrase. I think my parents, comma, John and Martha, comma. So we could continue on if we wanted to add an additional phrase there. I thank my parents, comma, John and Martha, comma, for buying me a new car. That would be a more complex sentence. The point being, though, by separating it this way, we see that it's indicating that they're his parents or her parents. If we separate it in a series, it's going to change the meaning. So if we said, I thank my parents, John and Martha, this indicates that we're talking about more than two people because of the position of the commas. So it looks like I thank my parents first, comma, then John, comma, and Martha. So John and Martha look like additional people rather than the parents, because just the simple placement of that comma, just adding that one comma after John changes the idea in the sentence. So this is what I was talking about. Sometimes when we're our use of commas can get us into a little bit of trouble as well. So being very clear on how to use them will really help. I see memes all the time, like, I wish I could think of one. If I find some good ones, I'll put them in the Google Classroom, because I send them to my daughter all the time. We find stuff like that. Okay. Capri, you want to go ahead and take care of this one?
I'm sure. As its name suggests, Seasons serve a seasonal menu that incorporates fresh, wholesome products. Which correction should be made in the sentence? Remove the comma after suggests, insert the comma after menu, insert the comma after fresh, insert the comma after wholesome. Let me see.
Did you say C?
Gosh, I'm going to see. I'm trying to read it again.
Oh, okay, go ahead. We're
maybe insert it. Yeah, maybe insert the comma after fresh.
There you go. Yeah, C. So this one, it's a little subtle, right? Because nothing here at first glance it seems to make sense. As its name suggests, Seasons serves a seasonal menu that incorporates. But then you run into fresh, wholesome products, and you just got to look for those two adjectives, and there's no punctuation in between them. So that one's a little subtle. You got to kind of look for the adjectives pretty closely on that. All right, I'll go ahead and read this next one. The salad, bread, and cheese are on the table, said Dan. Where do we want the comma here? Amina and Fatia, if you guys got answers, you want to put them in the chat, you can do that. Capri, what do you think?
I think that we need to insert a comma after table.
I think no comma after bread, the salad, comma, bread and cheese. After cheese.
Well, we're okay here because we have everything in the series.
Remove the comma. C. Remove the comma. No.
Yeah. No, we want to keep these two, the salad, bread, and cheese. That's correct, because those are things in a series. And
put the comma after cheese.
We're good there too. In this case, we want it after table.
Oh, so I had to write the first time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because it's a quotation.
right, because it's a quotation. We want to end the quotation with a comma. And they're kind of throwing those at you a little bit. We're probably going to see those in the next few examples down here in the paragraphs. So, yep, so our series is good here. We just needed the comma after table. Go ahead. Get that. Okay. So, dear valued customer, this letter is to inform you that National Cable will be updating its pricing plan this spring. Instead of paying a fixed rate, you, Amina, what do you think?
Okay. I think maybe A.
I think the answer is C.
It's going to be C, because we have an introductory clause right here. Yep. So instead, that's another one of those words to look for an introductory statement. Instead of paying a fixed rate, comma, you will now have the opportunity to pay by the amount of bandwidth. I might see if I can find like a list of common introductory phrases or words used in introductory phrases to put up on the Google Classroom. That'll help you sort of identify those. And let's see. All right, yeah, next one. Will now have the opportunity to pay by the amount of bandwidth you use each month. Under the previous pricing plan, customers could choose among several internet packages, including the basic plan, the high-speed plan, and how will you separate this?
B.
B.
B as in boy.
Yes. So including the basic plan, comma, the high-speed plan, comma, and the supercharged high-speed plan. So just the two, one after plan, one after high-speed plan. That's commas in a series. Although we were the first internet service provider to offer customers a choice of high-speed options, we also were the first to realize that these options were not cost-effective. Instead of raising the price of our internet service options, we have decided to institute a pricing plan based on how much you use the internet. With our consumption-based plan, all of our customers will have access to the supercharged high-speed plan, but
I think the answer is C.
C. And the thing to look for right here is that conjunction, right? We have that conjunction, but, and it's that one should tip you off when you see it, but or and. If you see that in a statement and you're looking for where the comma is to be placed, it's going to be right before the that conjunction word. So supercharged high-speed plan, comma, but they will have to pay only for the amount of bandwidth they use each month. At the new rate of $2 per gigabyte of bandwidth used, our average customer will pay only $40 a month for internet service. Now all national cable subscribers will have convenient, affordable access. I would point out, what was that, Capri?
I think the answer is A.
Yep, it is A. Why is it A? Do you know why? What kind of words? What kind of words do we see there? It's not a series, right? What do we have? Adjective.
Yeah, is it a clause? Like it's kind of like
What was that?
what you said.
Yeah, adjective. Yeah, it's descriptive words, right? So it's describing what type of access we have. It's convenient and affordable. So those are adjectives. You could so you're going to set those off with a comma. All right, we'll drop down here, go to the next one. Dear Mr. McCullen or Mr. McMullen, I recently stayed in your hotel during my extended business trip to Atlanta. I'm writing to express my gratitude for a lovely experience. As I'm sure you understand, it is difficult.
I think the answer is C.
C. Oh, yeah, that's C. Again, another introductory phrase, as I'm sure you understand, it is difficult to be away from home. However, your facility and staff made the situation an enjoyable one. To begin, my room was well stocked with supplies, including soap, shampoo, drinking water, and coffee. So we have A. Yep. Soap, comma, shampoo, comma, drinking water, comma, and coffee. So here we have 4 items. A lot of times you see like 3, but as many items as you have, as long as you separate them with a comma, you're okay. My coffee station even included cream and sugar. I also had a large supply of fresh towels each day. The bed was comfortable and the spacious shower.
B.
B. There you go. Yeah, so the bed was comfortable. That's a sentence, right? That's a whole sentence by itself. We add a comma, and the spacious shower was easy to operate. Another complete sentence. We've combined those two into a complex sentence with the conjunction and our comma. Additionally, the housekeeping staff did a thorough job of cleaning my room each day. They were even gracious about coming back on the day I decided to sleep in. Finally, the amenities at your hotel added to my overall experience. I was able to swim, exercise, and eat delicious meals, all without leaving the hotel. It's worth noting that the food was not typical of hotel fare. It was nutritious and elegantly plated. Finally, in closing, I can promise you that I will recommend your hotel.
A.
A. Another introductory statement. A simple one. You'll see that a lot too, like in conclusion, in closing are pretty common. That's another word you can kind of look for that will set off an introductory phrase or clause. Okay, and our last one here. Summons for jury duty, the verdict. After the witnesses finish their testimonies, the judge will instruct.
D.
Yep. There's that introductory phrase again, right? After the witnesses finish their testimonies, comma, the judge will instruct you about the law regarding the case. You must base your decision on the judge's instruction about the law. Instead of your own ideas about what the law is or should be, you and other members of the jury then will go to the jury room. One jury member will be selected as the foreperson, the presiding member of the jury. I had to think about this one too.
I think the answer is C.
Very good. Yeah. It took me a while because I kind of stumbled over. I was like, oh, wait, what are they looking for? So, right, that's one of those interrupting phrases. one jury member will be selected as the foreperson of the jury. So you could eliminate the presiding member. That's additional information. You could just simply say one jury member will be selected as the foreperson of the jury. But by adding the commas, foreperson, comma, the presiding member, comma of the jury, it gives you a little bit of information as far as what the foreperson does.
Yeah.
Yep, good job. And finally here, we've got two more. Your discussions in the jury room should include an honest expression of your opinions on the facts of the case and the testimony you have heard. Your discussions should also be tolerant and respectful of the other people's opinions. In a civil case, you may have to decide whether there is any reason for the defendant to pay damages. If you find a reason to pay damages, you will determine how much the defendant should pay. If the jury cannot reach a unanimous verdict in a civil case within 6 hours, then a decision reached by 10 members of a 12-person jury is acceptable. In a criminal case jury, discussions are finished when a unanimous verdict has been reached. What do we do here?
D.
D. Yep, another introductory phrase. This one was a little tricky too, because for some reason you could see, if I knew more about law and juries, you could say, is there something called a criminal case jury? But here it's a simple introductory phrase. In a criminal case, comma, jury discussions are finished when a unanimous verdict has been reached. Another way to look at those introductory statements and find out where they break is find out where the sentence makes sense. So you could start right there. Jury discussions are finished when a unanimous verdict has been reached. And you could leave out that introductory statement, right? It still makes sense. So just like other things, when we're talking about like the interruptive phrase and clause, if you can remove it and you still have a sentence that makes sense, you know where the commas go. Same applies for that introductory statement. And finally, if the jury, after long decisions, cannot reach a verdict, the foreperson must tell the judge. What do we do here?
I think the answer is A.
A. This one's a little tricky. That is partially correct.
B,
There you go.
because you can omit after a long discussion and it'll still be a complete sentence. but
Yeah,
That just adds more detail.
there you go. So yeah, you have, first off, you have an introductory phrase, and then you have an interruptive phrase. So if the jury cannot reach a verdict, right? That's, well, yeah. So if the jury cannot reach a verdict, makes a complete sentence. You don't need after long discussions. After long discussions gives you more information. You set that off with a comma and you're all set. And let's see here. That's the end of lesson 11. And
Can you tell me the answer of number 4 and the last one?
number 4 on the middle paragraph there, the one before this.
Yeah, the one last one, the one can promise you will recommend in your hotel. The last one, 4.
From the jury, or the one before that?
No, the one for the number 4, the hotel. The hotel. Last one, last section.
This one? Or from the student quiz?
No, this one.
This
Okay.
one? Number 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, in closing. A.
In closing, A. Thank you.
Any more questions? How are we feeling about commas now? Better, worse?
No, I feel better about them.
Okay.
It still could be a little confusing, so
So if you say you're gonna put something with Google Classroom, that will be better, so I can see more practice there if you can.